Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. I'm very excited to talk to you guys about AI-powered gamification. And before we get into that, I have a confession to make. Let me go back. There we go. Okay. So I have never trusted a loading bar. And the reason is that little progress bar that says like 99%, it could stay there for a whole, well, what feels like forever. So there's something interesting about a progress bar, though, because it does work. So even when it actually lies to us, it keeps us watching. It keeps us focused on, hey, when's it going to finish? So that's really the psychology behind gamification. You've got progress, you've got feedback, and rewards. So now, let's imagine if this bar were to actually learn from you. So for instance, maybe it's going to speed up if you are a bit impatient. Or maybe it will slow down when you need a little bit of a breather. Or maybe it will celebrate some of your small wins. And that's really what we're going to be exploring today. So how can AI make those little interactions feel alive? Using open source tools, we're going to be using TensorFlow.js, we're going to be using some Hugging Face Transformers models to give your web apps this sense of responsiveness and personality. All right, so this will be our agenda. We will first look at what gamification is and the principles behind it. And then we will talk about how AI fits into that picture and the tools that make it all possible. And then from there, we will run through a few live demos, and finally, we will wrap up with some key takeaways. Now, I do have the slides and demos up here, the QR code and a link for you. I will have that a couple more times in the slides, once right before the demos and once again at the very end. So if you want to snatch it later, if you miss it now, you'll be able to. And those, I made it really simple. That's for you to start playing around with the demos. They're all just very simple CodePen demos, so you can just immediately start playing with, testing out the code. So yeah, let's go ahead and get into it. Now, I want to go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Courtney Yatteau. I am a developer advocate at Esri, which is a GIS mapping software company, Geographic Information Systems. Who's heard of it? Oh, wow. Okay. Awesome. That's a lot more than I usually get. So I've been there for a little over 3 years now. And previously, before that, I was actually a high school math and computer science teacher. And I did that for 10 years. And then I transitioned into more of the CS side of things. I was self-taught in the CS realm. And gamification really was something that I constantly used in my classroom to keep the students engaged. So as I've transitioned into this more like front-end web developer type role, I've looked for ways to use it in my applications and my demos to get people excited to try out cool new things. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with the basics. What exactly is gamification? So really, at its core, it's about taking the mechanics that make games fun and applying them to non-game apps or experiences. So these are things like progress bars, levels, badges, challenges, rewards. And gamification really does work because it taps into how we're wired. It taps into our intrinsic motivations and extrinsic as well. We like that feedback, we like goals, and we really like that sense of achievement. And honestly, it is not just about the points and like the prizes and rewards and things. Good gamification is really about engagement through psychology. So it's a whole experience, right? You're creating experiences that make people want to keep coming back to your apps. Okay, so now that we've figured out what gamification is, let's talk about some principles behind gamification. So first, we have progress and rewards, and this is really what keeps the users coming back. So when you see your progress laid out right for you, whether it's a streak or a level or a reward meter, something like that, it does create a sense of momentum. And so it's almost that like motivating sense of I'm almost there. All right. Oh, and by the way, Starbucks does a really good job at the progress and rewards. In that image you can actually see how close you are getting to that next free drink or reward, whatever it may be. All right, so the next one is challenges and goals. And now these actually do give the user a bit of direction, something to work towards, right? So this could be something like your daily goals, achievements, or maybe milestones. So in apps like Duolingo, which I know several of my friends at least do use this app, that daily XP, that target that you have, it keeps coming back, keeps like reminding you to say, hey, be sure to practice today. So you don't want to make the bird mad. All right. And then there is feedback and reinforcement. And this here is, the key is really your instant response. So when you do, say, finish a lesson in Duolingo, you don't just get silence, you do get some kind of like maybe confetti or some kind of reward, progress updates. So it tells you you did something good and you need to keep going. And then finally, we have social interaction and competition. So humans, of course, we are all very social creatures, and we do love like comparing and sharing, and we all have that bit of competitiveness in us at some points, and sometimes we just like celebrating together too. So that's why leaderboards, like friends lists, or even small community shout-outs, those kind of things, really do work well. So when you bring all of this together, your progress, goals, feedback, and social connection, you get an application that users really do want to keep coming back to. All right. So now that we've talked about what gamification is and the principles that make them work, we're going to go ahead and start to really see how we can throw in AI into the picture. So the first role that AI plays is personalization. And it helps tailor your experiences to different individuals. So instead of giving every user like the same challenge or the same reward, AI can understand patterns, like how often someone actually engages with the application, where they drop off, or maybe what helps motivate them. And of course, the more that the user interacts, the more the system learns what keeps them motivated. And then the second role is adaption. Now, this is about dynamic analysis, so there will be a demo that I'll show in a bit with dynamic difficulty. So AI can adjust, like I just said, difficulty, pacing, or even potentially the tone that is being used toward the user based on their performance. So, for example, if a user is breezing through a quiz really quickly, maybe try to make the questions a little bit tougher. And if they're struggling, of course, kind of maybe dial it down a bit to help motivate them to keep going. All right, so here's what happens when we put everything together, and this is an AI-driven gamification flow. I've used Starbucks as the example for this. So it starts out with your user action, so this is going to be someone just makes, like, say, a purchase, or completes a challenge, or checks their app. And this is really the signal that starts this cycle. So then we have AI analysis. And here is where some data comes in. So it could be potentially the time of day that the user is placing an order, using the app, past behaviors, preferences, patterns, all that kind of stuff. So the AI looks for trends, like when does the person, say, maybe engage most with the app, or what kind of challenges are going to keep them coming back. So it does a little bit of analysis on what they've interacted, how they've interacted with the app. And then we have personalization. And so the system does then tailor what the user sees, of course, next. Maybe it could be, say, a cozy drink on a cold morning, or it could offer some kind of bonus that's based on previous purchases. And yeah, so that's really trying to get them to actually go through with potentially a purchase or an action. All right, and then comes user feedback. So this could be direct, like a rating or a survey, something very specifically direct by them giving their feedback, or it could be indirect by them just ignoring whatever it was that was pushed to them. So it could be, say, maybe easier wins to re-engage a quiet user, or adding difficulty for someone on a hot streak. So there's many different ways that the user could actually interact with the app. And finally, the AI creates an adapted challenge. So this this is really where the whole experience comes to a finish, and then we'll kind of continue to go through the flow. So after the user does whatever kind of interaction, the challenges are adapted based on their feedback and based on the whole experience. And so hopefully the next time the flow happens again, hopefully it's been adapted in a more personalized way, and it keeps them, again, coming back to the application. All right. So I have built a few browser-based demos to show these in action. So if you didn't grab that yet and you want to, go ahead. All of these are going to be running locally using open source AI libraries, of course, and they are available at that link. I'm going to pull up the first one, just a second. Okay. All right, let's check it out. Okay, so this first one is something fun. It's going to be sentiment analysis. So let's take a look at it. Okay. All right, so this is a simple sentiment analyzer that runs, of course, entirely in the browser here. It is using an open source model from Transformers.js to detect if something is positive, negative, or neutral tone in the text. So the model has already loaded. In fact, I can refresh it so you can see up there where it says model ready up here in the top right. Refresh, loading model, there you go. So it's been loaded. And then I can click analyze, and I've already got a couple sentences plugged in here for us to test out. So let's see what happens. All right. Okay, so we can see that right away what happened is we got an overall sentiment of positive. It was able to detect that generally this seems like a pretty positive a paragraph here, a couple of sentences. Now, what it actually did, though, was it was able to actually split up the first sentence. So it detected a little bit of nuance there. It said, okay, coding is fun, so that detected that as positive. But then it says sometimes it's difficult, right? Sometimes difficult, so then there you've got a bit of neutral and negative. And then finally, the last one was also very positive as well. I love to eat snacks while coding, and so that came out to be very positive. So overall sentiment, positive. So as you can see, it can handle not only multiple sentences, but it can handle, again, that breaking up of sentences, maybe if there's a bit of like nuance within the sentence itself. So we can test out, let me just test out something else just to see how it looks when I do something very simple. I'm just going to say today is Monday. I would assume that should be very neutral. And yes, it is quite neutral. So again, everything happening right in the browser. Let's go ahead and take a look at a bit of the code that's used to make this application. And again, you can see it all if you brought up the demos from the QR code. All right. Okay, so the first thing is I do start by importing the pipeline helper from Transformers.js. And this does allow me to run the AI models directly, of course, in the browser. And the next thing that we do is I load the sentiment model, and that one specifically here, you can see the name of it, quite long. And it runs locally in WebAssembly. So once it's loaded, everything happens instantly on your computer or device. All right. And then when you click Analyze, the text is trimmed and split into sentences like we saw before. So each sentence does get sent to the model, and it gives back the scores, negative, positive, or neutral. And then we do store each one for each sentence. And finally, we do calculate an average of the scores and display it on our web page. So that is the heart of the sentiment analysis demo. All right, so let me go ahead and do just a little bit of takeaways from this. We're going to look at AI and gamification. So on the AI side, everything does, of course, run locally, like I said. This does mean that the model is completely self-contained and fast. The model itself is a sentiment classifier, and it can handle different types of sentences, whether that has all positivity or a bit of a mix, and it can also handle multiple sentences. And then the gamification part's a little bit more hidden, kind of. It's not as obvious. But really, every time that you analyze the text, you do get that immediate visual feedback. So we had the emoji change. If it was positive, negative or neutral. All of the bars did update. And you can literally watch the tone shift. So it's a very visual experience for the user. And that's really the key idea. I mean, gamification, it doesn't always have to be some kind of reward or points. Sometimes it could just be feedback that is nice and instant and rewarding in a more visual way. All right, so the next demo that I have is a dynamic difficulty demo, and this is going to be using TensorFlow.js. Loaded. And I'm going to go ahead and actually refresh this page so we can actually see, to pay attention to those numbers right there. Okay, so we can see the training at the bottom, and it shows the epochs and loss. Basically, epoch is just the number of times that it does a full pass through the training data, and the loss just shows a bit of error that's happening within the model. So you can, I had to play around with this quite a bit for this really simple quiz. You would have to play around with the numbers and just see, kind of what gets you a good small loss. So the number of epochs that you do, and honestly, the amount of training data as well. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and click Start. A few other things to pay attention to, we've got the current level here, so it's going to start out as easy, and it's also listed here. And then each time I answer a question, it's going to give a certain percentage of what it thinks the next question difficulty should be. Now, this is a really simple quiz that I made. These are hard-coded questions. It's just a small set of questions. So there's only about like 3 or 4 for each level, so I'll probably get some repeats here, but let's see what happens. All right, banana color. All right, I answered that correctly, and I answered that pretty quickly too. So right away it was like, okay, let's try to go to medium now. It gave me 74% for medium. Now, as I'm talking, it's actually on a timer. So even if I get this right now, I probably won't progress to the next level. There it is. In fact, I got it right, but I took so long that it bumped me back down to easy. And we have the banana color one again. And then we have, whoops, I hit that too quickly. This one, we have chemical for gold, and I took too long there, and let's see if I can get back up to hard there. Okay, yeah, just showing you the different levels of basically how this could work in a very, very small set of data that was used to train this, this little application. So of course, the more data that you have, the better the application will run based on the number of cycles or epochs that you do. All right, now, one other thing I want to say about this is this was definitely something that, when I was in the classroom, I certainly enjoyed having experiences like this for my students because it made it to where I didn't just have to make, say, like a worksheet or something. It was really, allowing the students to kind of work at their own pace while still learning. So the ones that were, a little bit more advanced, they were able to, still feel like they were not bored and actually progressing. Versus the ones that were challenged a bit and they, needed the level to be a bit easier, they were still able to, participate and learn as they went through. So let's look at a bit of the code for this one. There it goes. Okay. Now, I'm not going to get into super details about this because it's easy to just discover what TensorFlow JS actually does, but I will describe a bit about why I chose some of these things. So it's created with TensorFlow JS using TF sequential. Basically, this just means that we are stacking layers one on another. And so the first layer does take in 3 inputs, as we can see here. So that is whether the answer was correct, how fast I answered, and the current difficulty level. And then let's see, the next part, the output layer, okay? So the next part is our output layer. And so this has 3 neurons, that's what this 3 here is for, with a softmax activation, 1 for each possible difficulty. So we've got easy, medium, or hard. And there's a lot more details I could go into about why I chose to use like softmax or ReLU here, but don't have a ton of time for that. Then the other thing, so here's what happens when I do hit submit. So the app checks whether my answer was correct. It measures how long I took and normalizes the time to a scale between 0 and 1. So it does a bit of normalization there. And then it actually turns the 3 values into tensors, which it's just really a fancy word for how the model understands. And then they're able to predict. So that's what's happening on this second to last line there. And then the model instantly does return a probability for each difficulty level. And so that's the gist of it. Again, all in the browser, very nice and fast. All right, here are some takeaways from this. So, again, this little quiz, it adapted in real time, on the fly. It looked at, again, both how accurate you are and how quickly you respond. And the best part is that it was, not connecting to any kind of server. So from a gamification perspective here, this really was about progressive mastery. So you do start with easy questions, and then you automatically raise the challenge if they get it correct quickly. So you get that instant feedback with every answer, so it does feel responsive. And a little bit of extra is that, of course, it's great for some kind of like learning or training app. I could certainly see something like this working in a workplace environment for training employees as well. So it's pretty simple, but it actually is pretty powerful when you dig into the code and start to play around with it and think about the different applications of where this potentially could be used. All right, so then we have a sentence similarity demo. And this one's pretty fun. This is a newer one that I came up with not just a few weeks ago. I was thinking about different ways to use similarity of sentences or words, how that actually could work for a developer who is trying to find different places where they can contribute during, well, it happens to be Hacktoberfest right now. So that's kind of like the idea behind how I came up with this app. So let's take a look. There we go. All right. Okay, so this does use a Hugging Face's sentence similarity model to match what you're interested in with real GitHub projects. So I actually am using GitHub's API to pull in information about different repositories that you potentially may want to contribute to. So let's go ahead and try out a prompt here. I'm going to say, I love writing docs and building accessible React components. I'll click Find Projects. All right, and here's what comes up. It says, your interests, what I already typed in, and then it says top matches. And so here, basically, again, it fetches these from GitHub, and it ranks them by similarity score. So each card does show a little badge here, which that could be earned if you do contribute. Now, that is something that I didn't actually connect in the code, but that's the idea behind it. That's a little bit of fun gamification, where if you were using this app, you could say, hey, if I actually do contribute, I could earn this badge. And then you can click Good First Issues, and it'll open up, and it'll go straight to GitHub, and it'll show you all the good first issues that are related to the sentence or information that you gave it. So a fun little way to discover potentially where you could contribute based on your interests. Let me try one more. All right, I like testing with Jess and Cypress. And there it goes. Once again, we do see the matches update, and we see a bunch of different options here. All right. So that is a very simple demo, but it's pretty powerful because it's actually able to do the sentence matching among the different words that you've put in with descriptions and names of the different GitHub repos. So let's look at a bit of the code for that. All right, so here, we'll look at that top box first. So I set 2 different values, and so the first value is the web address of a sentence similarity model that I was mentioning. That can compare my sentence to a list of the repo descriptions. And then the second value is my access key. So obviously I'd be able to use the service. And then the other function, and this is really just the main core of how this all works. First, it asks GitHub for a small set of repositories that have good first issues and keeps only the 3 pieces of information that I need, which are really the name of the repo, the link, and the description. And then second, it does send my sentence and all of those descriptions to the sentence similarity model. And each one receives a score, and then it does the bit of pairing for that, with pairing with each repository. And then after the scores, it does sort them by highest. And that's what we got. All right. Okay, so a bit of takeaways for this demo. So this demo, again, it did use Hugging Faces transformers to match contributors' repos to, or potential contributors to open source projects. So on the AI side, I did use sentence similarity to compare what a user types against GitHub repos, descriptions. And this was the model that was used. And then it did look beyond keywords. It did actually look for intentions and meaning behind it. So it's not as just straightforward as looking for the word react. It's doing a bit more. The model is handled to train actual intentions. And then on the gamification side, the app does turn into a bit of a light challenge, and that's really just where those badges come into play. I could certainly see, expanding that kind of application to maybe having some kind of social leaderboard, to encourage that kind of interaction with others. And finally, and the extras is we were using the GitHub Search API for all of the different candidates. All right. Now, I do have a full combined demo, and this is going to be one where I've used a lot of different things to put it together. So I've used everything that we've talked about so far, along with another two open source libraries, actually. We're using the mapping library Leaflet, and then we are also using a plugin, which is Esri Leaflet. And so this offers extended functionality of just the basic leaflet map. So this is going to be a fun geo-explorer type demo. So the idea behind it is you travel somewhere and you're wanting to learn more about the area. There's going to be multiple different things that I'll show you that I've embedded into this fun, gamified mapping demo. Just out of curiosity, has anyone ever used Leaflet before? Okay, nice. Awesome. Yeah, I would say if you've never used a mapping library and you want to, I'd say Leaflet is definitely one of the first ones to go to. Of course, I'm talking about in the JavaScript world. There is also MapLibre. There's also OpenLayers, Cesium for 3D. All of those are pretty good. It just depends on your use case needs. All right, let me bring this up. Okay, so like I said, we have a map using Leaflet and Esri Leaflet. It is currently centered around the Raleigh area. And there are a couple different modes that are a part of this demo. So we have a quiz mode, and then we also have a sentiment mode. So I'm going to keep it on quiz mode for now and talk through the rest of what's on the side here. So we are using TensorFlow for dynamic difficulty, and it's going to use that within our quiz that you'll get to see in a minute. And then we have the number of attempts, we have our accuracy, we have our average time that it takes, we have if we are on a streak or not for answering questions correctly, and we have an abandoned section. So I could say I just didn't want to answer a question. All right, the next thing is we do have a bunch of different badges that are going to be possible to earn. So we have an Explorer badge, we have a Local Expert badge, we have a Super Raider one, and we have a Legend one. And then we'll also have some fun hidden ones that will show up too as I go through and do some of these other things. Okay, another fun thing is the base map unlocks. So what I've done here is the map that we're seeing right now, the way that it's styled, it's called the ArcGIS navigation style. And this is just a very good general use case type of map. Now, as you continue through and answer questions, when we get to the question part of this, we will be able to unlock more base maps and see, kind of the cool styling for how they're made. And then we do actually get to learn a little bit about why that style or how that styling is used. So again, here for navigation it says clean labels, great for general use. So we'll see a bit more when we get to the questions. And then finally, I have a reset button down here. Okay, so I will go ahead and click on here. Now we are using Transformers.js for the majority of what's about to happen, other than the dynamic difficulty. Different models. All right. And it does take a few seconds to load on that first time. There it goes. So it says, which of these is near 300-358 North Salisbury Street? I don't know, but I will tell you, I didn't randomize the answers, so the answer should be A every time. I just made that easy on me. So I got it correct. Great, that's awesome. So we see everything over here actually update. We see the time, the accuracy, our difficulty level. It's still easy because I did take quite a bit of time to answer it. It took 11.6 seconds. So let's try again, and I'll answer quickly. Yay, okay, I got it right in 1.2 seconds, and now my difficulty level is medium, and we can see our average time has been updated. Now, as I'm doing this, we can see that all of the different base maps over here, we are adding up how close we are to earning each one, so just another little form of gamification there. So it means I only need to do one more. I unlock at 3, I will unlock another one. So let's try one more. Hey, there it is. And right away, the base map did update. And that just kind of gives it a fun feel of, say, it's very visual, right? It's not like, oh, hey, you unlock something. It literally changes it for you, so hey, whoa, something happened. It's kind of fun. Yeah, and then it does say street detail with subtle terrain. All right, now the other fun part to this app is the sentiment part to it. All right, I've activated sentiment mode. So I'm going to go ahead and click somewhere. And the idea behind this is you are supposed to really just state the sentiment that you feel about a specific location. I made it very simple, but you could certainly take it to the next level where you could say maybe this would be like when you go on Google Maps and you're reviewing places, like that kind of thing. And it could be used even in an AI sense to then maybe eventually predict places that are similar to what you do like, potentially based on your sentiment about that place. Or the other way around, saying maybe you don't want to go here. All right, so this says Jones Corner Studio is where I clicked. I'm going to go ahead and do something very simple. I'm just going to type love, save note, and right away it says saved positive. It's kind of fun because it does actually show an emoji. I'll show that in a sec. One other thing is it did say hashtag family friendly, 43%. So this is just a bit of extra detection of, okay, positive, negative, but then it's also using that sentence similarity to hit it against potential different hashtags. And so there's our fun little smiley. So I'm going to do a couple more just to show you what happens after I do a few more. And I'm just going to, honestly, I'm just going to do love 2 more times real quick so we can get what I want to pop up. There we go. Okay, right there at the bottom corner, we can see that it says topic badge earned, top voice in hashtag family friendly. So after you answer or you do leave a response in a certain number of, it was 3 places this time, you actually earn a hidden badge there. So it's kind of fun. Yeah, I will show one more just for the sake of showing the other emoji face. And that one, it actually came out to be neutral. I said bad. So could be, it was probably in the middle between negative and neutral. But it doesn't look too happy, so. All right, so this is a fun little demo that could certainly again be expanded, but it does actually save all of your different sentiments there for future use. And I didn't actually have it save questions, but you certainly could do that as well. All right, let me go back. There we go. Okay. So before I go ahead and wrap up, I do want to, of course, talk about these libraries that I did use. So first, TensorFlow, it did let us build the dynamic difficulty app that we did. And it was actually cool to see all of the changes in real time that were happening. So it really does feel like the game is actually keeping up with the player and yeah, making it more engaging for them. And then there's Hugging Face, which is basically the community home for machine learning models, as I'm sure most of us know. It's where you can find your pre-trained models for everything, from really like sentiment analysis like we did, to text generation, which actually I forgot to call that out, but that was actually what was happening, a bit more behind the scenes of that map demo. Certainly, again, you could check out the code, but you will see that it was doing a bit of geocoding there, which is just changing a location to a name, basically. So it just tells you, where is this place located. It sends that information to the text generation model, and then it's able to come back with a fun little quiz question about it. And then Transformers.js, which is Hugging Face's JavaScript library, right? I used it for several different of my demos here. It does run, obviously, those same models completely on device, no server, very fast. So together, I mean, all of these really should hopefully make you realize that AI is very accessible for web developers. Hopefully you've been a bit inspired to maybe try some of these different models out, right? It doesn't take some big, giant back end or some kind of maybe PhD in data science or whatever. Okay, and then we're going to wrap this up with really the core two things that we talked about, gamification and AI. So gamification does give us the structure for things like progress and challenges, feedback, and social interaction. And then when we threw in the AI, we actually bring in that personalization element, so it makes the user feel like they're actually being heard and the app is actually adapting to them, making the experience better for them. And the word I just used, adaption. They kind of go hand in hand there, right? It's constantly evolving and changing so that the user feels heard. And so overall, together, they create dynamic engagement. And so experiences that evolve with the user, and they're not just rewarding them, right? So it's a whole dynamic experience. We saw the flow earlier, so it's constantly adapting to the users and creating the engagement experience for them. So this is a list of different resources that I used to help build all of these demos. And I will say, if you do end up using any of the demos, playing around with them, creating something fun of your own, definitely please share it with me. I hope everyone has been inspired a bit to try some of this out. And I know gamification in general is something that some people think maybe it's kind of silly, but I hope you see a bit more of the usefulness of adding it to one of your potential applications. So yeah, here is the demos once again if you didn't grab it yet, and I would love to connect with you on socials, so there's that. Thank you all very much, and happy coding.